Let's talk about the WNBA and the league's demise now that Caitlin Clark is no longer going to play this season. The WNBA and the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, all the way up and including, let's just keep it real, Kathy Engelbert, Adam Silver, the National Basketball Association, everybody that participated in the farce.
Caitlin Clark's season has come to an abrupt and painful end, and honestly, the WNBA has no one to blame but itself. What started with a nagging quad strain in May snowballed into repeated groin issues through June and July, before a brutal bone bruise in August shut her down completely. Her body simply couldn't take the beating any longer. This isn't just a personal setback for Clark. It's a league-wide crisis that exposes everything wrong with how she's been handled. From sloppy officiating to a lack of clear communication and the relentless physical punishment she endured game after game. The warning signs were there all along. Now fans are furious. They're demanding answers, talking refunds, even threatening boycotts. And the league's response so far has been little more than deafening silence. How do you let your brightest star collapse after just 13 games? Where's the accountability? And what does Commissioner Kathy Engelbert have to say about this mess? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because if the WNBA wanted drama, they just got it. Let's break this down.
Caitlin Clark, out for the remainder of the 2025 season. Something we all think we knew was coming after what Stephanie White said earlier today. We couldn't be too sure until we see it for ourselves. And with this announcement from the GOAT's mouth herself, Caitlin Clark won't be returning this season, nor if the Indiana Fever make the playoffs.
How many times did we watch referees just stand there, eyes forward, as Caitlin Clark got smashed into a screen, yanked by the jersey, or straight up knocked off her feet, and then act like nothing happened? That's what infuriates fans the most. Everyone saw it happening live, possession after possession. Clark would come curling off a play, get hammered, bumped into help defense, sometimes even double-teamed before she could even touch the ball. And yet, the whistles stayed silent. The officials had chance after chance to step in and protect her, but instead they let it slide, until it stopped feeling like an oversight and started looking like a pattern. The Washington Post later confirmed what fans already knew. This wasn't just one overly physical team trying to make a point. This was the entire league taking shots at the player who had suddenly become the face of women's basketball, daring anyone to call it out.
Well, it all started last year, in her rookie season, where she received 20% of all the flagrant fouls in the league. And most of them came from Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky. And these weren't basketball plays. They were not only fouling her, but they were getting up, laughing about it, laughing about Caitlin Clark getting assaulted. Any other work environment, people go to jail for what's going on.
And the league's biggest attraction, the very player responsible for not just saving her own franchise, but sparking nearly half of the WNBA's ratings boom, was left completely unprotected. Just let that sink in. One athlete single-handedly filling arenas in Dallas, Las Vegas, New York, and Chicago should have been treated like the priceless investment she was. Instead, while TV networks shelled out record-breaking checks to air her games, the officials refused to give her even the most basic whistles that every other star in every other league gets as standard. What fans witnessed instead was chaos. Bodies crashing into her off-ball, defenders hand-checking her so aggressively her cuts died before they even began, and relentless contact that mysteriously stopped being called fouls the moment it was Clark on the receiving end. It wasn't physical basketball, it was negligence dressed up as toughness, and everyone watching knew it.
The WNBA and all the people that follow the WNBA and try to promote the WNBA don't understand that Caitlin Clark's game resonates with us. I say this every day, and every day I got to deal with somebody else dumb in the media. Caitlin Clark's game resonates because she's got flair, she's got flash, she's got style. I said this before, and I'll say this again. We saw Sue Bird's game. We saw Diana Taurasi's game. Kim Mulkey was Sue Bird before Sue Bird became Sue Bird. We've seen it. We haven't seen Caitlin Clark.
This wasn't just frustrating to watch. It was flat out dangerous. Constant cheap shots don't just leave a player sore. They slowly break a body down, week after week. Clark's quad that tightened back in May, her groin that kept flaring up through June, none of those were random freak injuries. They were the predictable result of repeated hits, awkward twists from being denied space, and unprotected landings that should have been whistled dead. Those are exactly the kinds of situations that create stress injuries, the kind that linger, worsen, and never fully heal without weeks of proper rest. But Clark never got that chance. She was pushed to keep suiting up night after night because the alternative would have meant dark arenas and disappointed fans who had already paid to see her. The league chose ticket sales over player safety, and now they're paying the price.
And last year, I noticed how much it was just Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark was taking all the hits. Caitlin Clark was taking all the abuse. But this year they've added Sophie Cunningham. She gets more flagrant fouls on her than anybody in the league besides Caitlin Clark. And Aaliyah Boston, she's been taking hits as well. But the worst thing is the consistency. So they don't call flagrant fouls, or most of the time, Caitlin Clark could be held for an entire game at a time. They don't call fouls. They don't call common fouls.
That's why fans are calling it pure hypocrisy. The WNBA had no problem plastering Caitlin Clark's face across every headline, bragging about record ticket sales, sold-out arenas, and a flood of new sponsorships tied directly to her name. But when it came to the simplest responsibility, protecting the very player cutting those checks for them, they suddenly treated her like just another rookie trying to earn her stripes. But the truth is, she wasn't just another player. She was the league's centerpiece, the one driving the biggest surge in attention the WNBA has ever seen. By allowing her to take hit after hit, night after night, the league didn't just skew game outcomes. They risked derailing an entire season and everything they had built around her.
The folks that cover the NBA, these people that play in the NBA, these people that cover the NBA, there I said these people, all of you, black, white, green, purple, why don't you understand a very simple thing? Her game is dynamic. Like Diana Taurasi was like a jackass to Caitlin Clark. Why? Her game is what people are drawn to. And then you go to the personality. Her game is different than any WNBA woman ever. And she wins, and she shoots from deep. It's no different than Steph Curry. How many times we got to say?
So, what happens when your golden goose stops laying eggs? Or in this case, stops playing? What happens when the league turns a blind eye to foul after foul, until your brightest star is hobbling instead of sprinting down the floor? That's exactly what we're living through now. The referee's negligence didn't just swing a single box score. It built the foundation for Caitlin Clark's season-ending collapse. And the fallout didn't stay confined to the court. It spread to fans, to media, to sponsors, becoming one of the most talked about controversies of the year. Looking back, you have to wonder, was Caitlin Clark's sophomore season doomed from the start? Go back to May, before the season even tipped off. Reports were already mentioning tightness in her quad, the kind of red flag most players would address with rest and careful management. Instead, she was rolled out as the league's showpiece, headlining every event, every practice session, every photo op and marketing push. Less than 2 months later, that early warning sign escalated into a painful groin injury. By July, the injury worsened into a full-blown tear on the right side. And with it came the announcement no fan wanted to hear. Caitlin Clark was done for the season. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't one unlucky moment. This was a chain of decisions, one after another, that left her body no chance to fully heal, and left the league with the very nightmare it should have been working to prevent.
I mean, it's a gut punch that basically encompasses an entire season of them. The Fever have lost so many players to injury, but obviously none bigger than Clark. And there was such a wait for this second season after her magnificent rookie season. And then, you know, the anticipation of her possibly coming back, only for that not to happen, takes a lot of air out of the room, obviously takes a lot of energy out of the fans, and is a devastating blow for not just the Fever and the WNBA.
What's most frustrating is that Caitlin Clark never really had a stretch where she was completely healthy. At least 3 different times this season, she was listed as day-to-day, each update wrapped in the word precautionary. as if that was supposed to calm everyone down. But apparently, in the WNBA, precautionary means rushing your top attraction through a quick treatment session, slapping on some tape, and sending her right back out to play the same weekend. It was painful to watch, like seeing someone try to run a marathon on one leg while being told everything was fine. Fans could see she was laboring. Every cut looked a little tighter, every landing a little slower, but the machine kept moving because the league couldn't afford for it to stop.
Clark, a two-time All-Star and the 2024 WNBA Rookie of the Year, has been sidelined suffering a right groin injury during the Fever's 87-77 win over the Connecticut Sun on July 15th. If you guys remember that game, Caitlin Clark put the team on her back in the winding minutes to give the Indiana Fever that lead. Clark also suffered a bone bruise at a later date during her recovery process.
And that's exactly where the mismanagement shows. Anyone who follows sports knows that injuries don't just magically go away. They compound if you don't give them time to heal. Forcing Clark through back-to-back games, constant defensive punishment, and brutal travel schedules didn't just risk a setback. It practically guaranteed one. The signs were obvious. Coaches had to see it. Her first step burst wasn't the same. Her cuts lost their sharpness, and she was clearly grimacing through minutes she probably never should have played. That's where the responsibility falls on the medical staff. Their job is to protect the player, even when the player insists she can go. Instead, they cleared her, game after game, until the injuries piled up beyond the point of no return. In the end, Clark was failed by the very system that was supposed to keep her on the court safely.
Caitlin has worked so hard throughout this time, doing everything possible to recover and return to the court, but ultimately, time is not on our side, said Indiana Fever COO and GM Amber Cox. While we will continue working with Caitlin and provide her with every resource we have available, there is not enough time left in our season for her to safely return, and her long-term health and well-being remains our top priority. We are looking forward to having her back at full strength to start the 2026 season. Clark appeared in 13 games during the regular season, averaging 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, while helping lead the team to the 2025 WNBA Commissioner's Cup title.
Think about the hours she admitted to grinding out just for a chance to step back on the floor. Hours in the weight room, hours in rehab, hours trying to strengthen every muscle around that injury, only to end up back at square one again. Fans kept getting hit with optimistic updates and probable return timelines, but inside the locker room it was clear her body just wasn't responding the way it needed to. Meanwhile, the public was strung along. Stadiums kept advertising road matchups with Clark's name plastered everywhere. Fans bought tickets in droves hoping to see her play, and all along, she was nowhere near 100%. That disconnect cuts deep. It wasn't just disappointing, it felt like a bait and switch, leaving both Clark and her supporters frustrated and betrayed.
And this is what Caitlin wrote. I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who had my back through all the uncertainty. This has been incredibly frustrating, but even in the bad, there is good. The way fans continue to show up for me in the Fever brought me so much joy and important perspective. I'm so proud of how this team has only gotten stronger through the adversity this year. Now it's time to close out the season and claim our spot in the playoffs.
So, was revenue really put ahead of Caitlin Clark's health? At this point, it's hard to argue otherwise. The Fever leaned on her to pack arenas. The WNBA banked on her to drive record TV ratings. And when the red flags started flashing early in the season, no one had the courage to hit pause. The result? Clark didn't go down because of some random freak accident. She broke down after just 13 games thanks to a season-long chain of short-sighted decisions. And that collapse didn't just end her sophomore year. It ripped away the league's biggest momentum surge, taking ticket sales, TV buzz, and sponsorship hype right down with it. When Commissioner Kathy Angelberg finally addressed Clark's season-ending injury, fans immediately felt something was off. Here was the most powerful figure in the league responding to its biggest player health crisis in years, and yet her statement read like a corporate press release. Instead of honesty and accountability, fans got sanitized optimism, a generic nod to league growth, and zero acknowledgement that poor officiating, relentless targeting, and a lack of player protection were all part of the problem. It felt less like leadership and more like damage control, and it left fans with even more questions than answers.
This is on your head, Kathy Engelbert and the rest of the WNBA Players Association executive leadership who failed to hold officials and players accountable for the barbaric style of play the Fever and Caitlin Clark have had to endure this year. Kathy, resign.
And that disconnect is what really stung. Caitlin Clark went from carrying the league's ratings on her back to sitting on the injury list for months. And when the moment came to show real leadership, fans were waiting to hear the words, "Yes, mistakes were made, and here's how we're going to fix them." Instead, Commissioner Kathy Angelberg pivoted right back to the same polished talking points about expansion plans, new revenue streams, and constructive dialogue. That might sound reassuring on a quarterly earnings call, but fans weren't buying it. They could see the larger issue plain as day. The referees under Angelberg's watch had repeatedly failed to control the physical targeting of the league's biggest star. And rather than confront the problem head-on or promise accountability, the commissioner simply sidestepped it, leaving players and fans feeling like nothing was going to change.
A bunch of players and coaches over the last few days have complained without being fine-worthy about officiating. I just want to see about your thoughts on if officiating is an issue and how it can be improved, because clearly there seems to be problems or a disconnect between what players and coaches feel and what officials are actually calling.
What makes it even more insulting is how often Kathy Angelberg has proudly paraded league growth every time a microphone is in front of her. Growth that, let's be honest, was built almost entirely on Caitlin Clark's back, while referees were busy swallowing their whistles as she absorbed shove after shove. Angelberg was quick to celebrate the packed arenas and record-breaking buzz in May and June, smiling about how the league was thriving. But by August, when those same arenas were filled with frustrated fans demanding refunds and answers, she was still focused on profits instead of accountability. For supporters who had poured their money, their time, and their belief into this season, her response felt tone-deaf, like she was living in a parallel world where balance sheets mattered more than the health of the player who made those numbers possible.
I know as a fan of sports for 60 years now, I know that, no one's ever happy with officiating. All sports deal with it, but we're working hard to make sure we're putting the best product out on the court, and our officiating then follows that.
The backlash was swift and fierce. Across social media, even diehard WNBA supporters said Angelberg's refusal to address referee accountability was proof the league didn't truly care about Caitlin Clark's safety. Some fans called it a betrayal. Others didn't just talk, they acted, demanding refunds and flooding timelines with screenshots of canceled ticket orders. What began as heartbreak over Clark's injury quickly morphed into open hostility toward league leadership. This was Angelberg's chance to meet fans where they were, acknowledge the officiating failures, and promise that player protection would be a priority going forward. Instead, she offered hollow, scripted lines that sounded detached from reality. And in doing so, she poured gasoline on the anger that was already burning hot.
They play against Breanna Stewart. She goes to the line 14 times. Asia Wilson goes to the line 13 times. And Aaliyah Boston can't play 20 minutes in a game without being on the bench in foul trouble. That's another problem that we're dealing with. But like I said, this year, it's not just Caitlin Clark. If you wear that Indiana Fever jersey, consider it done. The refs are not going to be fair, and they are going to cheat and do whatever it takes to do what the higher-ups say.
Fans now see Kathy Angelberg as the face of a league that values public relations over player health. A league that treats its brightest star as a marketing tool instead of protecting her as a long-term investment. And that realization has hardened into something bigger than frustration. The boycott talk isn't just noise anymore. It's organized, coordinated, and aimed squarely at draining playoff attendance and putting real pressure on the league's bottom line. Angelberg's carefully polished statements didn't calm the storm, they made it worse. They turned simmering frustration into a firestorm, showing fans just how out of touch leadership really was with the core problems eating away at the WNBA. And once that disconnect set in, it opened the door for full-blown panic to hit. All it took was one official injury announcement to send the market crashing. All-Star Game tickets that were selling for over $200 in June plummeted to barely $60 overnight. As resale sites were flooded with fans desperate to unload seats they had circled on their calendars for months. And this wasn't just any All-Star weekend. It was supposed to be the event. In Indiana, Clark City, the stage the league had hyped as her first chance to shine under the brightest lights at home. Within hours, all that hype evaporated, leaving an event that suddenly felt empty, hollow, and stripped of the very energy that made it special.
We've got Colin Cowherd saying, you know what? Guess what I didn't talk about on my show this year? The WNBA. Guess why? He just come out and said it yesterday. Because Caitlin Clark was not playing. That's why. He said, I led my show, my biggest, largest national sports radio show in the country. I led my show with Caitlin Clark 6 times last year. I mean, you don't lead a show with anybody unless they can draw.
Fans who had spent serious money expecting to see Caitlin Clark compete in skills contests and be celebrated as the new face of the league were suddenly demanding refunds. And it wasn't just about the money, it was about trust. Supporters felt they had been strung along for weeks with those constant day-to-day injury labels, even though insiders already knew her chances of returning were slim to none. When the truth finally came out, it didn't look like bad luck anymore. It looked like the league had tried to squeeze every last dollar out of her name before admitting reality. That sense of desperation had been playing out for months. The league had already shifted multiple Indiana Fever road games to larger arenas because Clark's name alone was enough to sell them out instantly. Teams that typically played in front of 6,000 or 7,000 fans were suddenly moving into NBA-sized venues, billing those matchups as must-see events. But the moment Clark was officially ruled out, the bottom fell out. Those same buildings that had been celebrated for selling out were now flooded with refund requests, rows of empty seats, and angry fans posting screenshots of canceled tickets. Many didn't even wait for game day. They immediately flipped or dumped their tickets the second the news broke, and the resale market reflected the panic, with prices crashing almost overnight.
The ticket prices. The demand fell off a cliff. And it's not just the on-court product that suffers without number 22, Caitlin Clark. The entire weekend's economic opportunities have felt the fallout.
What made it all sting even more was the deep sense of betrayal. Fans had bought into every optimistic update, showing up to games believing it was only a matter of time before Caitlin Clark suited up again. Many paid premium prices just for the chance to witness her return in person. But when those promises turned out to be empty, it became clear that her name hadn't just been promoted. It had been milked to squeeze out every last cent. The result was brutal. Trust didn't just fade, it collapsed. Fans felt misled, manipulated, and taken for granted. And once that trust was gone, it wasn't coming back easily.
For the last 2 weeks, Stephanie White knew where this was going to end up. I would say for the last month or so, they kind of had a feeling where this was going to go. The main issue, another day-to-day injury that turns into a season ender. Another day-to-day injury that turns into a season ender. And if you don't call that a lack of transparency, I don't know what to call that.
And the financial fallout went far beyond ticket refunds. Attendance took a hit in every single city where Clark wasn't on the court. Television networks that had bet hundreds of primetime hours on her games saw ratings nosedive almost overnight. Sponsors who had bought into the Clark effect suddenly found their ads tied to matchups that were losing viewers week after week. This wasn't a slow leak. It was a freefall, a measurable collapse that stripped away the illusion of steady growth and revealed the truth. A massive portion of the WNBA's momentum, revenue, and relevance was riding on the shoulders of one player.
They could have easily said 2 months, 1 to 2 months, be evaluated in the next 6 weeks. Instead, they played this day-to-day, game-time decision, probable, questionable nonsense for the last 8 weeks. And that is why fans are so pissed off for the most part. I'm not going to speak for everybody, But I know if they were upfront and didn't BS us, people wouldn't be that angry at the organization, at least not as angry as they are now.
The anger eventually boiled over into action. Online, calls for boycotting playoff games gained traction fast. Fans openly vowed to leave arenas half empty to make a statement. The excitement and optimism that fueled the early part of the season had been replaced by raw frustration and open hostility. The league wasn't just missing its biggest star, it was watching the very business model it had built around her begin to unravel in real time. And that leads to the bigger question. If the short-term future looks this unstable, what does it mean going forward for Caitlin Clark, for the Indiana Fever, and for the WNBA as a whole? Clark's season didn't just end because of bad luck or injuries. It ended because the league failed to protect her, and in doing so, they fractured the trust of the very fans who were keeping this momentum alive. That's the real damage here. Fans don't want carefully worded PR statements. They want accountability. They want officiating that protects players. And they want a commissioner willing to step up, take responsibility, and guarantee that this won't happen again. Without that, a playoff boycott could gut attendance and kill momentum before the postseason even begins. Still, the Fever aren't done fighting. Kelsey Mitchell is putting up big minutes every night. Aaliyah Boston's leadership continues to grow. Lexi Hall keeps grinding. And Caitlin Clark will be back, stronger, healthier, and more determined in 2026. What do you think? Is the WNBA to blame for this mess? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on all notifications so you never miss an update. And if you're ready for more deep dives into the biggest stories in sports, click the video on your screen right now. We'll see you there.